You're going to have to edit out do that part again.
You adjusting yourself?
Yeah.
It is early. But that's good. We just wanted to do this
That's not good.
I wanted to do this podcast before jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I got that.
Because...
Pump us up a little bit.
Well, yeah, and depending on how I do for the day, sometimes I'm just like, screw jiu-jitsu.
That's true.
I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if you don't leave the gym at least once a month, like especially after you get belts, if you don't leave it at least once a month or like once a week feeling like you suck at jiu-jitsu, you need to move to another gym.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it's definitely like more than once a week.
It's about once a week for me. At least
yeah,
once a week.
I get put in a triangle and I'm like, I'm done with this forever. I suck at this sport. But yeah, this week's book, we chose a jiu-jitsu book, mostly just so that we could talk about jiu-jitsu. I think, because you wanted to just choose a college football book so that we could just not talk about the book at all and just talk about college football the whole time. But turns out, apparently there are no books on college football.
Well, I think that's because college football players don't know how to read. But
I was shocked. I was like, man, there really aren't anything.
No.
So unless somebody out there knows a college football book, maybe write that in the comments. We can give it a shot.
And when we say college football, we mean the SEC.
Yeah, you're a big Georgia fan. I like the SEC. I still am a Pac-12 fan, but I got a year left of Pac-12 football.
Yeah, Pac-2 now.
Yeah, so sad.
Anyway.
But yeah, so this week's book is Breathe by Rickson Gracie. By Rickson Gracie. Just kidding. That throws me off. All the R's and the H's.
Oh, yeah.
At first, when I first started jiu-jitsu, I was searching on Google. I was like Rickson, Hixon.
Yeah. Same.
And yeah, it turns out I'm an idiot. And in Portuguese, all your R's are H's. And so
only the ones that start.
Yeah.
Matthew is explaining that to me. Yeah, so if you have an R in the middle of a word.
Sounds like R.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not every, but just about all of the first generation after Haleo, whose name starts with an H.
But the H is silent.
Haleo, yep. Yeah. Everybody after him, all of them, I guess not Carlos, right?
Yeah, Carlos Jr.
Yeah, that's like a separate line. They kind of broke off early.
Yeah, but you got Rickson and Henner, and I guess Henner's way later, but
Hoyler,
Hoyce.
Yeah, all of them start with R's.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there who's like, I'm going to look some of these guys up, starts with R, in case you were wondering. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the book, Breathe by Rickson Gracie.
So do you think he actually wrote it?
No. There were parts that I was like, he wrote that. He was very instrumental in this part. And then there were parts where I was like, yeah, he definitely didn't write this part.
Well, it said, I forget the dude's name. It's with so-and-so.
Yeah.
Which if he hired a professional writer, hot take is probably should have found another one.
Yeah, seriously. This book was interesting because I was interested in the history. Not well written.
No.
Yeah, should have definitely found another one. The best part of the book was the foreword by Jocko.
He's a very good writer.
Well, I'm just kidding. I thought the book was very interesting.
Yeah. But as somebody who does jiu-jitsu, I felt like it was really interesting. If you weren't in jiu-jitsu or interested in it, I could see how it would be difficult to finish.
Yeah, I felt like the book could have been so much cooler too. He had a very interesting life.
And a weird family.
And a weird family. His dad basically bred warriors. That was his goal.
And they were polygamists.
Yeah, they were just like, his dad was like, I'm going to have children with you. And then just did that with a bunch of different women. And then was like, now we're going to cage fight almost to the death to find out which ones stick around and become warriors. And those are going to be my favorites. And the rest of you, I don't love. Like, that was the family dynamic early on. And it was just so glossed over. Like, just, there were some things in the book that I felt like I was like, oh, that was covered in a sentence.
Like what?
Like all his affairs, Rickson's affairs.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, and I was married. And I never was mean to my wife. But I also just slept around with random women all the time.
Yeah. But I didn't rub it in her face.
Yeah. Then it like moves on.
Okay.
And then we had a baby. And it's just like, dude. That was pretty quickly glossed over.
I mean, you could kind of tell that he's not proud of it, obviously, because apparently he is loyal to his new wife.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That was one thing. Just the whole time while I was reading the book, I had to think, like, as he was telling his story, I think Rickson had a crazy life, but at least he's, like, self-aware, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he understands that, like, lots of the stuff that he did was, like, crazy and not the best. And he even talked about that all through, like, every time he mentioned his ex-wife, Kim.
Yeah.
Like, he still is, like, still holds her in high praise, which I thought, you know, is not always the case when people are talking about their ex-wives. But anyway.
So I was reading a little bit about the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty controversial book within the BJJ community, actually.
Oh, I would imagine, because he rips on a few of the other Gracies. And
he rips on a few of the Gracies, but also, I don't know. So just so that everybody knows, how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu?
Same amount of time as you.
I know, but just for the podcast. We started the same day. It's been...
I think we started in May of 2020.
So it's been a little over 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's been a little over 3 years. And we started in the same school, but now, since us moving to Idaho, we're in a different school. So right now I'm at a Pedro Sauer Academy, and Pedro Sauer is actually, sorry, we have a little kiddo interruption here. But no, Pedro Sauer is one of Rickson Gracie's students. He's actually mentioned in the book a couple times.
Yeah, I think he's one of Rickson's, like, good friends.
Yeah, so he was belted directly under Rickson.
Mm-hmm.
But your academy was a Pedro Sauer Academy, and now it's a...
Yeah, so Professor Paul, who I train under, who's awesome, he originally... he trained under Pedro Sauer when Pedro came to Utah. So actually there's a story in the book of when Rickson fought Mark Schultz, like the U.S. wrestler.
Oh, yeah, and he comes to Utah.
Yeah, he was coaching the BYU wrestling team.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he fought Mark Schultz in a grappling match, and Rickson won. I mean, it's like the story of... Mark Schultz had Rickson in a cradle for like 15 minutes, and then Rickson got out and you got him in an armbar, or something like that. But anyway, so Pedro was the one who set that fight up, and then, Paul trained under him. I think he was around when that happened. Professor Paul's been training for a really long time. But anyway, over time, Professor Paul and Pedro got into a rift, which sounds like it's pretty common in jiu-jitsu to have these, like, political rifts, disagreements about businesses and things like that. Just kind of seems like the Gracies and Brazilians don't really have the same idea of, like, what sharing a business is with Americans.
Yeah.
And so essentially Paul had to leave Pedro, which is like a big deal because like you have to have your lineage of jiu-jitsu for it to be legitimate. And so Professor Paul was like professorless for like a while right before he got his black belt. And then he jumped over to Flavio Bearing, who was friends with Elio Gracie. I can't remember if they're related, but I know another one of Rickson's best friends growing up was Flavio's son, Marcio.
Oh, okay. So that's where that lineage comes through.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marcelo Garcia. Or
No.
Marcelo.
I think it's Marcio Bearing. But the Bearings.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple Bearings mentioned in the book.
Yeah.
And so Flavio's then like one generation younger.
I think.
Than the friends with Rickson.
I might be wrong on this, but I think Flavio trained with Elio when Elio was still like learning with Carlos.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I don't know. But I know that the Flavio's style of jiu-jitsu is pretty different from Rickson's. So like Professor Paul teaches, he almost got his black belt under Rickson.
Mm-hmm.
He tested for his blue belt under Rickson and everything, right? And all the way up until his brown belt. So he does a lot of moves that are like Rickson style. And then when he started training under Flavio was like, oh, that's great. But Rickson does that. What did Elio do? And then he had to like teach Paul like Elio's jiu-jitsu. Which, I mean, what that shows me though is that like everybody has a different style of jiu-jitsu, because you're talking about like the relationship that Elio and Rickson had all growing up. And still Rickson had a different style of jiu-jitsu than Elio did. Yeah. And Elio's style of jiu-jitsu is completely different from what Carlos's jiu-jitsu was.
Yeah. You know? No, it is kind of crazy. And I don't know, it's crazy how far not removed we are from it, but also how splintered it is, I feel like. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, our gym's academy, the lineage literally goes like,
Professor Jeremy and then
Jeremy and Brandon both got their black belts under Pedro, like directly. Mm-hmm. Who got his black belt directly from Rickson, who then got his black belt directly from Elio. Mm-hmm. Like it's 3 generations through now. And yet, like you were saying, there's so many different styles and so many breakoffs from it. And I think that was an interesting point at the end of the book, that after kind of Rickson had his whole career, kind of after he had his breakdown from his son and everything, he kind of realized how fractured the jiu-jitsu community around the world was. And he said that was one thing that he wished he could be a part of fixing. Like he wanted to kind of standardize jiu-jitsu and make it a little bit more structured as a community. And looking around, I don't think that's happened. I don't know. That's from my experience. Like there is no standard.
No, not yet.
I mean, there is between academies, but there's no like standard, white to blue, blue to purple, purple to brown curriculum. There is no, some gyms have a focus on self-defense. Some don't. It's all just kind of at the mercy of a professor, and it's all under the umbrella of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. I think there were a few things that I thought were interesting as he was talking about it. I really sympathize with the way that he feels about the splintering of jiu-jitsu, because, this is like literally his family's jewel.
Yeah.
Right? Every single one of them fought for jiu-jitsu. Like that was their like banner. Their entire lives was jiu-jitsu. The entire family, which is like a lot. Elio had like 30 kids, and that's not even counting Carlos and the Bearings and I mean the Machados, you know, and all of his cousins, you know. So, I mean, their entire family did jiu-jitsu, and now, like, the cat's got out of the bag. Like, it's trying to catch a fart in a windstorm. You know, like, you're never going to get it back.
Yeah.
And so I can see how that, like, really hurts all of the Gracies because they, not even, like, that they want to control the sport. I think everyone's going to look back and say, hey, Rickson, Elio, Carlos, Machados, like those guys pioneered jiu-jitsu, modern jiu-jitsu. But like now we're on to our own thing now. Mm-hmm. And I think that just kind of like as a matter of like
legacy,
it hurts them.
Yeah, because at the end of the book, he even talks about it. And I think it was like probably one of the most insightful points from the book is he talks about how had there not been so much fracturing and had they worked together a little bit more, he thinks that this as a whole, the art and the martial art and the style would be called Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's a small point, but I think it is kind of the, like you said, kind of the crux of his feelings about the past, and that like that legacy as just the name moving forward is going to be lost. Like it's just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from now on. And the more and more you get removed from it, I think the more and more people are going to disassociate Gracie's from Jiu-Jitsu. Whereas had they been able to work cohesively, there would be 100% like association of Gracie's and Jiu-Jitsu.
I don't even think the Brazilian part's going to stick around too much longer. I think it's just going to be called Jiu-Jitsu.
I mean, Brazilians still have a pretty strong foothold in Jiu-Jitsu, but I agree. Yeah. I think
it'll be there, very similar to how, like, right now we kind of still kind of acknowledge that it's the Gracie's Jiu-Jitsu, but I mean, I didn't know. What was Rickson's older brother's name? The one that first moved to America.
Wasn't Hoyler, was it?
No, Hoyler was the one who stayed like loyal to Rickson. Anyway,
I need to.
He was the one that tried suing the Machados for using the name Gracie. So then they started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that's who Eddie Bravo started under. So like Joe Rogan's lineage goes through the Machados.
Wasn't Henzo?
No, Henzo's in New York.
Holes? No. Horian?
Yeah,
Horian.
Yeah. So Horian was the one who first moved to California. He brought Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to America. So then that's who Rickson got his green card through.
Yeah, that's right.
Everything.
Right.
So anyway, Horian tried suing the Machados for using the name Gracie. And that's why they changed it to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
That kind of sucks because, again, that was his realization at the end of the book is that he wishes that it had all been.
Yeah.
And it just came down to greed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. Okay, so a couple parts from the book that I want to ask you about. At one point, so in the foreword, Jocko talks about him discovering jiu-jitsu for the first time. So he's a Navy SEAL, and he goes to just this, or no, some guy comes to the Navy SEALs and puts on a clinic for a couple of the Navy SEAls, and he's a blue belt.
A white belt. He'd only been going for 9 months or something.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. He was a white belt, and apparently he just tossed Jocko around, which had to have been some,
Another Navy SEAL.
yeah, big freaking,
Which it was.
big freaking dude, because Jocko's a big dude. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like me as a white belt. I'm like, bro, Jocko would have smashed me as a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. But like our vision of Jocko is like, 20 years of jiu-jitsu Jocko.
I just mean like most Navy SEALs that are
Yeah.
training day to day.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
he was like a young Navy SEAL. I mean, they're still athletic as get out, all get out, man.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And like athleticism can get you smashing a 9-month-old white belt, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Unless the 9-month-old white belt is also very athletic
Mm-hmm.
and has jiu-jitsu. Like there's only, you got to compensate somewhere. But so I was like, man, that's a big dude. But Jocko describes that dude in his foreword as having a superpower, is what he talked about. Do you think that jiu-jitsu is a superpower?
I mean, define a superpower. Because in some ways, yeah, I do.
You think so? Because
Yeah.
I think I've heard a lot of people on podcasts and just in like YouTube videos and things like that talk about how they don't like jiu-jitsu being called a superpower. Like, I don't know.
Why?
Because they said there's nothing super about it.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're not shooting lasers out of your eyes, for sure. But like, I mean, think about it like this. Like, imagine somebody in the world who has a perfect center of gravity. They can never be pushed over. Would you consider that a superpower?
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, there are dumb superpowers. I mean, look at Hawkeye, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the level of which it is super,
Yeah.
is different. But so to the general public, then in jiu-jitsu, you have an incredible base, like your center of gravity, your ability to stay calm in confrontation, which I think is unique to jiu-jitsu compared to other martial arts or sports because of the way or like how hard you can roll and not get injured. Your understanding of like other people's base as well. So I mean, just take those three things: your understanding of base and the ability to stay calm in a difficult situation compared to the average is off the charts.
Yeah.
So sure, yeah, it's not, Mr. Frozone or whatever, but I mean, I would consider it pretty super compared to the average. I'm not saying that like it's a superpower, but I get why they say it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Sometimes I see it and sometimes I don't. But I think that's because sometimes I get smashed and sometimes I don't.
Well, by other people who do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
If you get
It's
a new guy,
It's wrestlers though that kill me because
But-
wrestlers are.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that kryptonite to jiu-jitsu because I think jiu-jitsu is the kryptonite to wrestling. Actually, I think it's the other way around. But a very, very well seasoned wrestler can come in and just, smash a lot of people in jiu-jitsu. Like I do think, maybe they're the kryptonite to each other because I think wrestlers point out a lot of flaws of a lot of jiu-jitsu players. Like I think a lot of people who think that they've got good jiu-jitsu, and even myself, like when I was like, oh dude, I think I'm feeling good. Nothing humbles me more than just some wrestler that walks in, it's his first day, and just lives on top of me, just smashing my face into the mat. And I'm like, you know what? I suck at this game.
yeah. Well,
Taking my ball and going home.
so yeah. But the thing is like, what is jiu-jitsu? Jiu-jitsu is just,
It's basically wrestling.
it's a grappling art, right?
Yeah.
And so if you were to take aspects of, I think there are certain judoka or certain judo players who expose holes in wrestlers' games. I think there are judo players who expose holes in people's jiu-jitsu games. I think there are wrestlers who expose holes in both of those. And then there are jiu-jitsu guys who exposes holes in both of those. So it's like...
And then there are Sambo guys who just...
You suck.
Are
I'm just kidding.
We just can't do anything right.
No, I'm just kidding. But like...
Khabib's just turning over right now.
You think Khabib's watching your podcast? Come on.
One day.
He's like, brother, what is this? Who are these blue belts? I smash. Anyway.
Yeah, he would smash. He would smash me.
Yeah.
With an E.
Big time. Smash. Anyway, so like, I think, yeah, just like knowing how to fight is a superpower in general, in my mind. That being said, I think grappling and grappling arts are more effective in fighting when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, and I can back that up. But
I would argue against that.
Judo, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu as a whole, if you were to put the perfect mix of those, I don't think there's much that can beat that.
Throwing a little testosterone, throwing a little testosterone,
a little acai,
a little acai bowl, and then you got Gordon Ryan.
Yeah,
some daddy issues, and
why do you think striking is more effective?
I don't think it's more effective. I think that the reason why grappling, like taking grappling classes, and if anybody's on the fence about it or starting out and it's like hating it, I think the reason why grappling is better for self-defense is not because of like whether or not you're on the ground or standing up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that really matters. I think what matters is the intensity at which you can practice. The sucky thing about practicing like stand-up is that if you practice and really try to hurt somebody, you're going to like really hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be brain dead because you're going to just get punched in the face repeatedly for 3 years. Like if we had done kickboxing for the last 3 years, like we had done jiu-jitsu, because I train jiu-jitsu 4 times a week, usually, like somewhere between 3 to 5 times a week, I'm going to jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
And I roll pretty hard. You know what I mean? Like I'm really trying to strangle somebody. Every single one of those days. There's an open mat every single one of those days.
Mm-hmm.
If there had been like I don't know what it's called in kickboxing, but
just rounds, sparring.
Yeah, like an actual sparring round that is as hard as my jiu-jitsu rounds after every day. And I had done that for 4 to 5 days for 3 years. Mm-hmm. With kickboxing, my face would be smashed and I would be brain dead. You know what I mean? Like they don't get to train as hard and as intense every time because it's impact. It's high impact. Like you're getting punched and kicked in the face, punched and kicked in the legs, arms, stomach. Like it's very high impact. Whereas jiu-jitsu it's as intense as you want it to be, but it's also as low impact as you want it to be. So you can tap early and it's really safe on your joints. But at the same time, somebody could be going as hard as they can to try to strangle you. Mm-hmm. And you get that intensity and then you just tap and it's over. You reset. Mm-hmm. And then you can do that again and again and again and again without getting hurt. And so I think that kind of living in that situation of somebody really trying to strangle you and you really trying to strangle somebody else, you kind of understand your limits and you understand other people's limits really, really well. And I think that is the superpower of jiu-jitsu, honestly, is understanding your own limits. And I also think that that's where jiu-jitsu is more effective as like a self-defense art than striking. But I honestly don't think it has anything else to do with like that one is more effective than the other or that it happens more frequently than the other or anything like that. I think whether or not you're going to be, I think there's lots of self-defense situations that happen standing. There's lots that happen on the ground. And honestly, I would argue that if you're in a self-defense situation, it would be better to be standing because if you're, on the ground and guard.
Wait,
And some dude has a friend and soccer kicks you in the head. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that blows. It'd be way better to be on your feet, be able to run away, be able to like turn quickly, to be able to assess threats. I think there's a lot about that that's important to be more on your feet. But
here's the thing.
But again, you don't get that intensity unless you train jiu-jitsu. And I think that's so important.
But even on like a strategic perspective of it, when you're striking, you have no control over the other person.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can get your stance or whatever, maybe pin them up against the wall. But when you're talking about grappling, and you have them in a gift wrap on the ground and you are literally smashing their face in, that is control.
Yeah.
And if you want to get up and leave, you can get up and leave. So
I think there are certain positions in jiu-jitsu for sure, but I think if 90% of people were to go in and play their jiu-jitsu game in a street fight, they'd get soccer kicked in the head.
Yeah.
They'd pull guard, and then their best friend would, this dude's best friend would come up behind them and just wreck their day. And so I think,
but that's different, because that's one of the things that Rickson talked about in this book that finally clicked in my head, is that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or modern day Jiu-Jitsu is a sport. So you can't can't use sport jiu-jitsu in self-defense. You have to know the self-defense, the martial art side of jiu-jitsu, which is pretty different than the sport. You're never going to pull guard in the street. You never pull guard in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. The only time you pull guard is when you are on bottom and something bad is happening.
Yeah.
So then you pull guard so that you can sweep and be in mount.
Mm-hmm.
So like the martial art side of jiu-jitsu, obviously it works. They won the UFC with Hoist, who wasn't even the best Gracie. Rickson never lost. From the time that he was like, what was it, like a blue belt? He never lost a single match.
So that was another thing. So after reading this book, I went
Did you
through
look it up?
And I looked it up, and I was like, let's figure this out. So his record that he touts is 450-0.
That's a lot. A lot of matches. And that's not even just jiu-jitsu. That's like Vale Tudo.
That's like Vale Tudo. That's like whatever. 450.
Yeah.
That's the record that he says that he has. And he doesn't say it in the book. So, I mean, but online, that's like his record.
Yeah.
It's 450-0. But I went to BJJ Heroes, and he's a controversial figure.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, a lot of people were like, yeah, apparently there were a couple things in there. And again, I don't know if any of this is true, because I don't know him personally. Never trained with him. Never even trained with Pedro Sauer. I would love to, but just have not yet in my career. Eventually would love to train with some of these guys and like meet people who know people and, talk about jiu-jitsu as a history. I think it's fascinating, but I just want to give both sides of the argument here, because a lot of people said that he counted rounds in the gym as wins sometimes, depending on how intense it got.
I could see that because he considered them fights.
Yes, exactly. Because he talks about some rounds in the book too.
Yeah.
And how they escalated into fights, how he would roll for fun and then he would roll for fight in the gyms too. And some people said that he counted those, but then he wouldn't count when he lost in gyms.
Well, I mean, just look at his professional fights.
Yeah, so his professional fighting career, I think,
spectacle fights.
I think is like 28-0 or something like that. Like for his professional record, he is definitely like he's 28-0. I think on BJJ Heroes, I know that he never lost in any of the like fights in Japan or any of his like actual professional fights, any Vale Tudo fights. There's no record of him ever losing. His 450-0 to me smells a little fishy because
I mean,
that's the nice
I
thing
didn't
about
even heard that number.
That's the nice thing about. I mean, if you Google Rickson Gracie record, it's like Rickson Gracie 450. I was like, yeah, I don't know about that one, because that's the nice thing about jiu-jitsu is that like you can get caught, like somebody can be sneaky.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that one to me is just doesn't smell right. But he didn't ever lose in like a major fight. That is true. 100%. He was pretty baller.
So if you look at, and Vale Tudo is like, for those who don't know, Vale Tudo is like pretty much anything goes. You can't bite.
There are 3 rules.
Eye gouging.
And groin strikes.
Yeah.
That was it.
So if you look at that, against every other martial art you could ever even imagine, he fought strikers, he fought other grapplers, he fought everything. He still won every time.
Yeah, but I don't think, and this is where I wish.
And he said in the book he only went to the second round, like once or twice.
Yeah, and this is where I kind of wish in the book he had been a little bit more thorough as to what all he did, because he definitely didn't just do jiu-jitsu.
Well, no.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
growing
sure
up, they trained.
Striking, yeah.
I was about to say, growing up, I mean, we can talk about his early life. So this book, just for anybody listening, is basically just a history of his life. It's just chronological order.
It's a biography.
It's a biography. It starts very early in his life. I honestly don't know why it's called Breathe. He talks about it like twice for like 2 paragraphs. I was I was expecting a lot more about his breath, like, because I know that he was super into breath control, and I know that he was super into that kind of stuff and yoga. There's like half a chapter on when he meets some yoga guy,
Orlando Cani,
and works on breath work. And then there's like a paragraph in the end of the book where he talks about breathing. And I was like, really? You decided to name your whole book over that? Very interesting choice. But the majority of the book is about jiu-jitsu. Like, that is what the whole book is about. And it's just in chronological order from when he was born all the way through, late in his life, when he kind of has this rediscovery of what he wants to do with jiu-jitsu as a practice. And his early life was nuts. Like, they didn't just do jiu-jitsu. Like, his dad, Haleo, I mean, it was a jiu-jitsu focus, but he just bred little warriors. Didn't matter how they fought. Like, he just liked that they fought. Like, it wasn't like it was a jiu-jitsu match that we think of today. At least the way that he describes it in the book. It wasn't like go up, slap fists and try to strangle somebody. It was like murder the other person.
Yeah.
And if somebody says you're done, then you're done. Like, they were throwing punches easy. Like, they were getting on mount and just dropping elbows, throwing punches. Like, it was definitely much more combat than, like, more full contact than jiu-jitsu is now today.
Well, that's because traditional jiu-jitsu, and he brings this up too, it comes from Japan, and it was the martial art of the samurai. So jiu-jitsu was like the hand-to-hand combat for the Japanese. Karate was not a thing. Judo was a demonstration art and a sport to train. Yeah, because jiu-jitsu was how you killed people when your sword got kicked out of your hand.
Yes, because judo in Japan was the sport. That was like wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think, and like you said, jiu-jitsu was more of the martial art, like more of the combat art. And then slowly over time, jiu-jitsu is just morphed to be another version of judo, in my opinion. Like, it's definitely more of a sport now. The same style as judo. I mean, just a different sport. Instead of throwing and points and things like that, you get points for sweeps and things. So,
which I think they should. I mean, we could talk about that.
Yeah,
later.
I mean, like, what is your opinion on the evolution of jiu-jitsu? Like, kind of peeking behind the curtain through this book of what jiu-jitsu used to be, where it was more of a. I mean, it honestly was like a a no holds bar Vale Tudo style.
Yeah, 100%. Which is why it was so effective in the early UFC days.
Because guys were so used to just training one style. And then they entered the UFC and they were like, my one style could beat your one style. And jiu-jitsu was one style, but it was one style that didn't really care, like didn't have a long enough history that they were like, we can't do that. That's not our style. You know what I mean? Like it was like it was just taking whatever it could to be the best.
Yeah. Again, I think it's important to separate the martial art from modern jiu-jitsu, the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as like the effectiveness of the martial art, I think it's really effective. Self-defense stuff. If you just learn like the self-defense side of it and use the self-defense side of stuff in self-defense situations, I think it's extremely effective, but that's different than modern sport jiu-jitsu. I think modern sport jiu-jitsu is now in the same category as judo or wrestling, and it's just another grappling sport. And I think Rickson has a really good point as far as like every blue belt should know the self-defense side of it. Because I do think self-defense is important. But I like how he says every blue belt should know it. Like once you get your blue belt and you understand the self-defense side of it, obviously keep it sharp. But like everything beyond that point, like the sports side of it is really fun. It's extremely beneficial. It's great exercise, really good for your mind, all of those things. So it's like, just let the sport be a sport.
Yeah.
You know, like don't have your gym be, okay, well, we're only doing self-defense because this is Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's like, yeah, but like, I mean, you learn so much through the sport and it's so fun. So might as well just do the sport stuff too because it's fun.
Yeah.
And so I think as far as the sport goes, if I was the god of jiu-jitsu, I would make unified rules. And you could have different styles, just like wrestling has folk style. I mean, yeah, there's catch wrestling, but like there's folk style, freestyle, and Greco-Roman in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So it's like you have your 3 styles of wrestling. And in jiu-jitsu, you could have something similar where you have your gi jiu-jitsu, you have your no-gi jiu-jitsu, and then you have like combat jiu-jitsu. But under each of those 3 rule sets, they're all uniform in every competition. If that were to be the case...
Just take IBJJF rules.
No. IBJJF rules are so dumb.
They're so bad.
We argue, or not argue, we rant about this all the time because...
Who likes IBJJF rules? That's what I want to know. Why? I don't even think a lot of Brazilians play that game anymore. That's the thing. I don't think even...
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I don't think Brazilians like it anymore. Like you look at Mika Galvão.
Yeah.
Mika doesn't play IBJJF rules when he doesn't have to. He plays them at IBJJF competitions, but like he doesn't play them outside of IBJJF. Like no, like Andre doesn't play them. Definitely not Felipe. Felipe doesn't play IBJJF rules. Like everybody eventually, Marigali kind of still does. You know what I mean? Like his jiu-jitsu outside of IBJJF still would work in IBJJF. But like I guarantee you that's going to change over the next 3 years. Like training more and more with Danaher, he for sure is going to just dump IBJJF tendencies. Like who likes that? Like nobody, like no top athletes like IBJJF, and then no Americans like it.
Yeah.
How is it still a thing? That's what I don't get. I mean, they have the monopoly on like the big time competitions. Like, I mean, winning in IBJJF still means something. But
I think it's waning.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to hold. Like, I don't think IBJJF world gold medal means as much as an ADCC gold medal.
Oh, definitely not. ADCC is like the top.
Yeah. So it's like, and it's not because it's no gi. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody cares whether or not you're in a gi or not in a gi. I think it matters the rule set and who is fighting.
And if there's submissions. Because that was the other thing that Rickson talks about that I 100% agree with, is that he hated the gaming that eventually creeped its way into jiu-jitsu, where it was a lot of like points installing. And that is so boring. Like, I hate watching a match where somebody gets an advantage and stalls.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is I think people started doing that because of like the gamification of jiu-jitsu, again, the sport, you know. So that was like, in order to become champion, people thought that was the easiest path to become champion. But now I think the sport is starting to evolve past that, where people are starting to realize that, one, that only works so well until somebody is so much better than you that you can't stall them out. And then two, there's no money in that. Really, if you want to take jiu-jitsu to the next level of, so it went from combat arts to sport and now to professional sport. That leap from sport to professional sport, there has to be submissions. Like you, it has to be exciting. There's not going to be money in stalling. And so I think people are trying to push the sport in that direction. And I think that is actually a healthy step back, like almost backwards towards when it was more of a combat sport. Like, people are really trying to finish fights. But IBJJF doesn't help that at all. Their rule set is geared towards stalling and geared towards all that stuff. And it's so much easier to stall in the gi.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is like, if you were to have ADCC rules in the gi, I think it would be interesting. The thing is, like, if you don't know how to do judo, it's the same thing if you don't know how to wrestle a no-gi. And you get two guys who don't know how to wrestle try to wrestle each other at ADCCs in that last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It just looks terrible and it's boring.
Yeah.
And so if you get two guys who don't know how to do judo in the gi, and then one of them pulls guard, and then you can like hang on, and they can't do any sort of like explosive passing moves because the other guy on the bottom is stalling, then yeah, you've got a boring match on your hands. So I think, honestly, the only way that you can really get around that is by creating a new rule set that penalizes the bottom player for stalling, which doesn't really exist. And then the other thing is quintet or team formats.
Oh, dude, team formats are where it's at. Like, that is truly that's where it gets exciting. And that,
because that even brings excitement to stalling.
Yeah.
If you say so the way quintet works is you have like 5 guys on each team. They all have to weigh under 900 pounds or some given weight limit.
Combined.
So like, you could have somebody who's 130 pounds and somebody who's 260 pounds. And then they individually create their lineup in secret, and then they just go at each other that way. So you could have somebody who's 130 pounds going against somebody who's 260 pounds. And they go for, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it is. And if one person submits the other person, that person leaves the mat, and the person who won stays on the mat. They get like a minute of rest, and then the next person in the lineup comes out onto the mat, and then they fight. So you could potentially wipe out an entire team. Now, the reason why that's cool is if neither of you guys get a submission, then you're both out. And so
there's no advantages, no points, no nothing.
Yeah.
It's sub only.
So what's cool about that is, like, say you're 130 pounds like me, and you're going against somebody who's 260. If you survive 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is with this guy, you're both out. And so you can win matches for your team by stalling.
Yeah.
So what's cool about that is like there's still like excitement around the fact like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's going to survive this. As long as it's not like running around in circles and being dumb or whatever. Because I do think you can get eliminated for that. But
it's usually not like that because there's so much more pressure, I feel like, when you're in a team. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And somebody like your teammates are depending on you to knock people out, to get the to get the advantage on the other team and all that kind of stuff. That people are just shooting for submissions. Mm-hmm. You know that's on Sunday, right?
Yes, I'm very excited.
But I did find out. It makes me a little sad. The rule set, there are no heel hooks.
Oh yeah, I did know that. It's a Japanese thing.
It is?
Yeah. Sakuraba doesn't like them. But you just love heel hooks.
I love heel hooks because they're everywhere.
Yeah, but so are arm bars and chokes and everything else. Like,
yeah, but they don't outlaw chokes and arm bars. That's the thing.
I know. Like, I don't think they should outlaw them, but like, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're gonna outlaw them,
if you're gonna beat somebody, like, I mean, I don't get the whole thing. Like, you can beat me, just don't beat me that way. You know what I mean? Like, like if jiu-jitsu is really supposed to go back to like the Rickson era of, like strong best man wins, no rules, then like all these little ticky-tacky rules of like, oh, you can't do heel hooks, or oh, you can't, enter the legs, or oh, you can't smother, or like all of these things.
Oh, the IBJJF rules, you can't do anything.
You can't do anything, and it's like that's so dumb. Like they created rules to limit the way that you can beat somebody when in like Rickson's era and like when you were in the book, it was like, bro, you could punch people. Like they didn't even care.
Yeah.
Like there were no rules. And I get like separating striking and grappling. But past that separation, I don't really understand what the point of that is outside of the fact that it just makes you less of a complete grappler. You know what I mean? Like if you're like, oh, that's one thing I don't have to worry about. You don't ever develop your game in that regard. Then you go up against somebody and you're like, yeah, either in a real world situation or in a match where there are less rules, like an ADCC rule set. And you're like just unprepared because you haven't done the whole body. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you make some things off limits within the sport of grappling because you just don't like it? Like it has nothing else to do with it. Like it is, I mean, every move can be unsafe, but every move can also be safe if you train it. It's just a matter of like some gyms just don't train it. Yeah. Like you said, it's a Japanese thing.
Well, I just know that because like
then all of Japan should just work on freaking legs for a year.
Look at Imanari though.
Yeah, I mean, he literally
his name is literally used for an entry into a heel hook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like I say, it's a Japanese thing, but it's like I think it's Sakuraba in particular who doesn't like them. But notice, one of the things, Rickson was talking about heel hooks way back when he was fighting jiu-jitsu versus the Brazilian catch wrestling, whatever that was called.
Yeah, he said he got a heel hook in his first match.
Yeah, so
they've been around.
They've been around. What happened, I think, I mean, we could look at BJJ Heroes or whatever and look up the actual history of it. I think IBJJF, there was some group of Brazilians that didn't like it. And so they outlawed it in their tournaments. And that's what kept them out of jiu-jitsu for so long. And then when ADCC came around, then there was this explosion
when
of
John
heel hooks.
When John Donaher came around, then there was like an explosion of heel hooks. Like legs became...
I mean, Dean Lister was doing it because he did catch wrestling in Brazil.
Yeah.
But other than him, nobody did it until John started teaching everybody about him.
Yeah.
So...
But again, it's half the body. Like, dude, you can't outlaw that.
You got to be able to attack it.
That's like saying, and it literally is almost the exact same thing as saying you can straight armbar, but no Americanas or Kimuras.
Yeah.
Because it twists instead of extends.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's like, well, what do you mean no Americanas or Kimuras? Like, that's whether or not you're doing them to submit or you're just doing them to like open up other offense. Like, you can't just take away rotation.
Yeah. I think there are some moves that should be outlawed. Any sort of like spiking to the head, like takedowns that are like flip them upside down. And
oh, well, yeah. Again,
there are certain things like that.
It's
but
the
as far as
impact stuff, yes.
Yeah.
Where you as the person who's getting it done to you has no control over how far it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. If you can't let go and everything be okay,
yeah,
then
I mean, the nice thing about heel hooks is like if you understand them, unless somebody's like ripping them and trying to hurt you, like you can always tap.
Mm-hmm.
You can always tap.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to ride them out long.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No, I think generally speaking, the submissions that are around right now, like the only one that I could think of that's like, okay, maybe you should avoid that is, I know in a lot of tournaments they outlaw like spine submissions. Other than like a twister,
yeah,
there are certain spine submissions where you fold the neck down or fold the neck back. I could see how those are dangerous.
A lot of those are legal in IBJJF.
Like, can you do twist? I don't think you can do twisters.
I don't think you can do spinal locks, but you can do neck cranks. Like that, I don't get. Like you can do a neck. You can do a neck crank. You can even do a rear naked choke over the jaw.
Oh yeah, because that's the one I'm thinking about in particular. Like maybe that one is bad because you're folding the neck back,
and that's still legal.
Yeah,
but like other moves aren't.
I guess maybe that one's not as bad.
I mean, it's still rough.
Yeah,
like dude,
I'm thinking of a self-defense move in particular where you have like a chicken wing and then you dive, you dolphin dive on the back of their head and fold their chin through their chest.
yeah. I know what you're saying, but
yeah. I mean, in general, like heel hooks, toe folds, straight ankles, knee bars.
It's a joint. You can attack joints.
I guess
every
hip.
joint.
There are some dangerous hip.
I mean, there's the split, whatever, where you're like splitting outwards, where you've got somebody in lockdown and you're pulling them.
But that's like a stretch. If you like isolate the hip joint,
I don't know any move that like isolates a hip joint.
I know one, and it is gnarly. And the thing is, like, you can't really attack it without falling. Scissor takedowns is another one that I could see, like for the health of players, like because you're jumping into them right at the side of their knee.
Yeah,
you don't have control.
Yeah.
So maybe outlaw that one. But like, I don't know. I don't want to make up the rules.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You're always like,
I just want to complain about them.
Yeah, seriously. But I'm a little sad that there are no heel hooks this weekend because one, I feel like 10th Planet, like that's like half their game. Well, not really. Like
that and rubber guard.
I just know that a lot of the 10th Planet does do a lot of leg entries and stuff like that. Although I think the 10th Planet team that they brought isn't a ton of heel hooks.
Well, and I feel like there's heel hooks were really popular like when we first started, and now there's like this resurgence of straight ankles. A lot of people are going for just straight ankle locks. Yeah,
I think straight ankles are making a comeback. I don't think rear naked choke will ever go out of style.
No. Hopefully the omoplata does, because that's the dumbest move ever.
I can't hit an omoplata. I was talking to somebody the other day about this. I was rolling on the mat, and we were talking, and I was like, if I get into an omoplata, it's because I've messed up everything.
And you just are trying to get on top.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not trying to omoplata you. I messed up my armbar and then messed up my triangle, and I was like, crap.
Yeah.
I ended up in an omoplata on accident. I do not get there on purpose.
I want to start using it as a sweep. But other than that, I'm like, it's so awkward and like everybody rolls out of it or, pushes back into you. At least for me, because I'm 135 pounds. So it's like, I don't have a whole lot of force. Like I have to hit it perfect and then mess up as well. So
Jeremy's really good at them. He's good at all the platas.
Yeah. He's good at whatever he wants to be good at.
Yeah.
Honestly. Rolling with Jeremy is tough.
So going back to some of the stuff here in the book that I wanted to talk about. One of the things that Rickson talks about that I think is probably the most beneficial thing for me that jiu-jitsu has given me. And I'll say right off the bat, I love jiu-jitsu. I should have said this right at the beginning of the podcast, but it is the most fun thing I've ever done. I think it is at the very top for me. I love it so much. I've been doing it for 3 years and I literally cannot get enough. If my wife would let me, I would go every single day.
Yeah.
But I understand that I can't, but it is so fun. But one of the things that I think has been the most beneficial thing from jiu-jitsu is something that Rickson talks about he learned at a very young age, which is, and this is the quote, he says that he found comfort in hell. Mm-hmm. And that was him just getting smashed by his older brother, cousins, whatever it was, constantly, and being able to be comfortable in uncomfortable spots. Do you feel like that has been a benefit for you?
100%. Jocko talks about it in the foreword as well, how Rickson told him, like, you do a good job of staying calm in bad places. For example, this last week, somebody ran a stop sign and T-boned my wife and I and totaled our car. And the whole time I was very calm. Like right after it happened, I made sure that she was okay. Obviously the door, they hit my side. So like I got like punched by the airbags or whatever. Couldn't open my door or anything. But like it was totally calm the whole time. Got out of the car, took care of everything. And my father-in-law and my wife were like, wow, Adam, you handled that pretty well. I was like, well, when I have like 300-pound dudes sitting on my face 4 times a week, it's like, this is okay.
Yeah.
Like my level of, oh my gosh, I can't handle this anymore is pretty high now. And so that, as well as just like, honestly, just like an overall like pain tolerance as well.
Yeah.
Of just like, one time I was teaching my sister-in-law how to do a backflip on a trampoline. And, I'm helping her or whatever. And she swings around her and her elbow clocks me right in the jaw. And, she landed it. And so I was like, oh, nice job. Good job. And she's like, are you okay? I'm like, what? Like I didn't even register because it's like I just get thrown on my head all the time or, or whatever. So, those kinds of things. I commercial fish. If you've watched the episodes, I talk about those stories. Like those situations are extremely stressful. But since I've started doing jiu-jitsu, like I can maintain my composure much easier. And just throughout life in general, I've got a lot of stuff going on in my life right now. And I'm pretty busy, but I can just breathe.
Nice.
And just breathe through it. But
yeah, I remember when we first started. So we went the same day. We were just like, all right, let's try jiu-jitsu. Joe Rogan talks about it. So does Jocko. Might as well give it a shot. And dude, I remember the first time somebody threw a rear naked choke on me, like for real. Like not just you and I wrestling in the house or you know what I mean? Like not just like brothers goofing around or anything like that, but like in the gym, somebody like trying to choke me out.
Yeah.
It kind of was panicky. Like, I don't know how you felt, but I honestly felt like, oh my gosh. And I remember that feeling like, oh, like I do not like this. Or like the first time somebody cranked on an arm bar.
But that was the one for me. The arm bar.
The arm bar got you. Like it was panicky. And then it got to a point where like for the first little bit, like I just felt like so panicky that like I just didn't want to be in those situations. You know what I mean? Like it was all just survival. Like just going to open mat and just being like, I just don't want somebody to get my back. Like, because it just felt so awful. And now, again, you can just kind of just like, I mean, I could have somebody like smashing me. And I'll just sit there and be like, dude, it's going to take a lot more than this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just that calm. And then also when I do get caught, it's not like, because it's not like I'm amazing at jiu-jitsu now. I'm literally a blue belt, so not incredible. But when I do get caught in jiu-jitsu, it's not like this panic, like, oh my gosh. It's like, oh, that was nice. You know what I mean? And then you just keep going. And like that ability to stay calm is one of the best benefits of jiu-jitsu. So like, I don't know, that is one of the reasons why I feel like everybody should do jiu-jitsu. And I don't know, I go back and forth on that. Everybody should do jiu-jitsu side of things.
I think they should do it the way that they do judo in Japan.
Really? How do they do judo in Japan?
They teach it in PE classes in elementary schools. And so if you learn how to fall, you learn how to somersault, you do all that, you learn how to throw each other, and it's like enjoyable, it's fun, it's just a game, right? I think you can do it. Now, jiu-jitsu, I think there is another added level of, you know, seriousness to it, where like you're teaching people how to like strangle and break limbs. And so I think that like the self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu should be taught. It's just like the basics, how to stand up, your break fall, what's your base, you know, how to take somebody to the ground and control them if you're in a bad situation, teaching everybody self-confidence, letting them roll around and wrestle. And even if there's no submissions, just sweeping and doing stuff like that in elementary school PE, I think would be great. And then they need to make it, if we had unified rules, like a set rule set, they need to put it in schools for sports and do it in the spring when all the wrestlers can do it. Because jiu-jitsu is a lifetime thing, which is like a big thing for us because we like cross-country skied. That was always something that people brought up, was like, by the way, once high school is over, you can continue to do this for the rest of your life. And or running, you know, those kinds of things are good habits that you can build, and then it helps you for the rest of your life. You're not going to play football in your 40s.
Yeah.
It's really hard to wrestle in your 40s, but there are jiu-jitsu gyms everywhere. And so you can competitively train for however long you want, and then you can just do it for fun for the rest of your life. And so as far as like exercise, self-defense, and like we've been talking about, like the mental aspect of it, I do think everybody should do it in some form. Maybe it's not you're going 4 times a week and you're focused on the sports side of it, but if you're going, or at least in high school, you learned how to break fall or, you know, whatever, just like how you learn how to shoot a basketball and you know the rules of basketball and you can play for fun or whatever. Yeah, I think everybody should do it.
Yeah, I think that. But then,
obviously, if you have cerebral palsy, you can't.
No, I just mean like, I guess there's a difference between everybody should do it and everybody can do it. I just think jiu-jitsu is hard.
Yeah, but imagine if you learned it in an environment that wasn't a bunch of sweaty.
Also, like,
We can just cut this part out.
No, it's fine.
Oh, right there. It's a rental, so don't crash it.
No, those are mine.
The Buick on my wall. Yeah.
Also, like, I don't think Josh could do jiu-jitsu. Oh my gosh. Because I think he's just too weak.
Soft.
Yeah, soft.
I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, Rickson does talk about in the book. Rickson mentions that he wanted the gyms to be a place where beginners were comfortable.
Yes. And because
if that changed, I think everybody should.
Because, man, that was not the way it was when Rickson was growing up. I hear stories about back in the day gyms, and I honestly don't think I would have lasted. And like I said, I love jiu-jitsu. I don't think I would have lasted back in the day.
No.
Dude, they were brutal.
I mean, I've heard so many stories of just like, well, because it's like macho guys coming in the gym. So you do have to set, like, I mean,
they had like the whole dojo storm thing, and you had like random people coming in thinking that they were better than jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I get that. But there were also like, I mean, they just tried. I mean, I've heard so many stories about gyms that just didn't want weak people. And so they would just basically take anybody that walked in brand new and Shark Tank them for like 2 months to try to get them to quit. And if they didn't quit, they were like, cool, you're part of the tribe.
Yeah.
And then be done. Like,
it's like a gang initiation.
It really was back in the day.
Yeah.
And that just sounds awful.
Yeah. I mean,
like, there's no way I could have made it through that. No. Again, you're tiny, but I'm still small in the world of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like most jiu-jitsu guys, I mean, at our gym, like I'd say our average weight is probably 200. Our gym is probably, I mean, there are a couple guys that, I mean, like me and a couple other guys that are like 160. Definitely, I'm one of the lightest. Then there's a lot of like 180 to 200, and then there's a lot of 230 plus at our gym. And so, like, they wanted to smash, man, they could smash. Like, that's just not fun.
Yeah.
Like, being small and getting friggin' smashed.
Yeah. Oh, and you gotta, like, there's a learning curve to it, because now I can roll with people who are big. But, like, I mean, the first year of jiu-jitsu for me was just learning how to
how to frame and keep people off of you.
Yeah. So, like, when still I'm learning that. But it's like, in general, how does that work? Because I separated my sternum. In that first year, it was at Christmas.
Yeah.
So, was that like 7 months in? I separated my sternum, holding my breath while somebody fell on me. And yeah, that was extremely painful.
Yeah, I've never been injured from a sport ever in my life. And I've played a lot of sports growing up. But since doing jiu-jitsu, I've broke fingers, broke toes, broke my rib. And the rib was, again, just a big guy. Smashing me. I think it was mostly my fault. I rolled when I shouldn't have rolled, because then he smashed me while I was inverted.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is you learn those things, like when to move, when not to move. Like, if they're on top of you, like, where are you going to put, like, your back? Because that was the other thing. My back hurt all the time. And I had to go to the chiropractor all the time because I was twisting when I was underneath people. You don't twist, you know.
I remember when I first started, my back hurt all the time, like all the muscles around my spine. And yeah, it just doesn't anymore. I get done with a day, and like I wake up the next day, and I'm sometimes a little sore depending on, you know, how hard the previous day was, but not like, I mean, not like where I was like, I laid in bed and I was like, oh, dude, my back hurts so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah. Couple things that I also didn't know. Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yeah, he's only got 2 fingers. Or 1.5 fingers.
What the heck?
You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. Professor Paul told a story of one time he was doing a seminar, or he was at a seminar, and they were setting up the mats.
It's got like this.
Yeah. So they were setting up the mats. Have you ever lifted up one of those mats?
Mm-mm.
Dude, they're like 80 pounds. They're really heavy and dense. And Jean-Jacques was walking, grabbing one like this and one like that. Just by his side, walking and hauling the mats. And Professor Paul was like, how is that even possible? I mean, the dude is literally got just tiny little pincher.
He's got a thumb and a pinky.
Yeah. And it's like half a pinky or half a thumb. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of his, because I subscribe to his YouTube channel because he does a lot of like instructionals on there. And yeah, he shows stuff all the time. Like when he does like a cross collar choke, he puts his hand in and then he just wraps his wrist around the shoulder and does it. He doesn't grab.
Yeah, that's got to be so crazy. I mean,
Getting
if you
beat
can,
by a guy with one hand.
yeah, seriously, like how demoralizing is that?
Well, there's a guy at our gym that almost lost a match. I think it was at IBJJF, honestly. I can't remember. But he had no legs. And he almost lost the match because he realized right as the match started, there's nothing to grab onto down there.
And like, how do you mount somebody?
Yeah, well, I mean, his elbow escape is incredible.
Oh my gosh. That's what I mean. Like, what do you like? Dude just pushes off you and he doesn't have to get his legs free. They're already free.
But the downside of that, I guess just mount is not an option
For him
or you.
Yeah. He'd have to go for like a seatbelt grip back and just ride it out. But then also, like, how do you get hooks? How do you stay on somebody's back? The dude, like, a dude with no legs.
He just gets back and he's like, no, it's imaginary.
Yeah,
It's
like,
imaginary body triangle. It's not, no hooks yet.
well, at IBJJF, you don't get points till you have hooks in.
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm saying. It's like, he's thinking body triangle. This isn't hooks yet.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But, yeah, jiu-jitsu's crazy. I can't believe that he doesn't have a hand because I struggle with jiu-jitsu with all of my fingers.
Speaking of fingers, that was something that really hurt when I first started.
Your fingers?
Yeah, I remember the skin on the backs of like my far knuckles, like underneath my fingernails, all getting ripped off.
I don't remember
from like grabbing the gi. But then, like, I just learned like, oh, you don't have to like death grip everything all the time, and then my fingers healed up.
Yeah. So, what would you say to somebody who's on the fence about starting jiu-jitsu or maybe has just started?
If you're on the fence, just go. Don't say like, oh, eventually I'm going to try it, or yeah, I want to get into it one day. It's like, just go. Like, not that big of a deal. If you just started, just stick with it. It's hard. Stay healthy. It's not a fight. It's literally just like treat it like you're, exercising, have fun with it. You're going to learn how to not get smashed. You're going to learn how to have fun with all of that stuff. But like when you're first starting, just learn as much as you can and have fun with it. Make it fun.
Yeah, I think jiu-jitsu is one of those cool sports that like just takes time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if I was a basketball player, just dribbling a ball and playing around with a basketball player, like playing around basketball, I don't think would ever, like how long you've been doing that doesn't always translate into skill with basketball.
Okay, so maybe we disagree on this because I think jiu-jitsu is the same.
But I think the longer you do jiu-jitsu, I think there is just a translation of skill with just time. Like because of the amount of comfort that you have in uncomfortable situations, because it's a puzzle. Like jiu-jitsu is just a puzzle with your body. Mm-hmm. Like you're just constantly just trying to figure out things that just the more time playing around with that puzzle, the more familiar you are with those movements. Now you can't just not roll live rolls or anything like that and just come to class and then leave every time there's open mat. Like you're not going to learn that way. Mm-hmm. But if you spend time doing live rolls, then just doing it for long periods of time, you are going to be inherently better than those who don't. Like, I think that there is a time factor in jiu-jitsu that just time equals skill in jiu-jitsu so much more than a lot of other sports because of the puzzle aspect of it. You like learn the pieces of the puzzle.
Yes. I think time is an important part to it. But if you were to like make an equation out of it, it's something over time. So time is really important, but like the reason why like I think you see that direct translation with time is that when you're training jiu-jitsu, if you're doing open mat, you are problem solving and doing the puzzle for an hour, 3 days a week or 2 times a week or whatever it is. So over an extended period of time, you're going to see a lot of growth. With basketball and stuff, like, yeah, you can like work on your shot or whatever, but like the overall meta like game, if you're not problem solving all the time, then you probably aren't going to get much better at the game. So with jiu-jitsu, like when you're first starting out or whatever, you're not even going to understand what you don't know. But as you like become like a blue belt, it's like something we're working on right now is finding holes in our game. And if you are working on those holes over time, time itself it's you're going to get better. But like if you don't roll, if you don't pay attention in class, if you forget everything that you're drilling, you're not really you're going to hit a plateau. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have to try for sure.
Yeah.
But
because I know people who plateau, like they don't pay attention, they don't try, and it's like they've been rolling for a long time and they still are not that good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But it is nice that you get in that open mat. You just need time in open mat. Like you need time doing live rolls. Yeah, you need the time.
Exactly.
So yeah, for anybody new starting, I would say it's going to suck. It's going to suck for a while. But eventually with time, it just gets better. Just keep going to live rolls. Keep getting smashed. Like don't stop getting smashed and think, oh, I'm just going to go to practice. Or I'm just going to go to the class section and I'll learn enough in the class section to eventually stop getting smashed. And then I'll start live rolling again. Like that'll never happen. Like you got to just spend their time getting smashed and learning those puzzle pieces.
Well, because like none of it is applicable. It's the same. It's the difference between learning a language in a foreign country or learning a language in a high school classroom.
Yeah.
It's never going to stick. None of it's going to work if you aren't learning it in the context, if you aren't using it in the country. If you learn jiu-jitsu with the live rolling in the context of jiu-jitsu, you're going to learn it way faster than if you're just doing the classes and then you don't roll.
And that's one thing that I think back in the day, like back in the Rickson day, they did really well. Is like they learned jiu-jitsu that worked. Sorry, we have another kid interrupting here. Thanks. That's okay. It's not as bad as the other day when Olivia and I recorded him.
I listened to that episode.
Pausing. It didn't come out too bad in post with just the clip in, but she just kept walking in. But, all right. So, a couple of last questions. Who do you think would win in a jiu-jitsu fight, Rickson or Gordon? Rickson Prime.
Yeah. Rickson Prime's 180. Gordon Prime right now is 210. 220.
I guess that's true. There is definitely a weight discrepancy.
But let's assume that they were the same.
Rickson fought up a lot too.
Let's assume that they're the same weight. What rules are we going by?
Dude.
If we're going ADCC rules?
Rickson fought at Vale Tudo. There's no rules in Vale Tudo.
Yeah. If it's Vale Tudo, I'm taking Rickson every time.
Well, yeah, with striking. I just mean just grappling though. So let's go ADCC because ADCC is probably the closest thing to no rules.
Yeah.
Except obviously no striking. Let's just do a no time limit. Just a no time limit ADCC rule set. Who do you think wins?
No time limit. So it's just submission only.
Submission only.
So no time limit, I'd take Rickson.
Really?
Time limit though, and it was like just ADCC format, I think I would go Gordon. Now, I'm leaning towards Gordon though, because just like math, science, every discipline, the next generations are always going to surpass the past generations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's giving Gordon an advantage that he's had, 60 years of jiu-jitsu to study, whereas Rickson lived through the beginning 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
15, 20. But man, listening to like some of the people's stories of Rickson rolling in these gyms, I think Rickson was just as dominant as Gordon is, but Rickson fought more. Gordon doesn't. Like, Gordon gives, like, he signs up for these super fights and then he misses 3/4 of them.
I know.
So it's like, I'm giving Gordon all of the credit that he's got. But if you were going to take the two, man, I mean, I think I would lean towards Rickson.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the same weight. I don't think there's anything that Gordon could surprise Rickson with. I don't think there's anything that Rickson could surprise Gordon with. I think it's just who's fought more.
Yeah.
Who's a better fighter. And I think Rickson's a better fighter.
I don't know, man. I don't know where I fall on that one because, I don't know.
Then again, I haven't watched a whole lot of film of Rickson fighting, so maybe,
yeah,
if I were to watch more of his film, I'd say, I don't know, maybe Gordon's just more technical.
Yeah.
But
so what do you think of the book overall? I know we just picked a book just for jiu-jitsu. So if you had to rank this book on 0 to 5 for importance, 0 to 5 for fun, where would you rank this book?
As far as importance goes, if you do jiu-jitsu and you're serious about jiu-jitsu, I'd say it's probably like a 3. I think it's important to know like the history of it, and obviously Rickson is like an icon. Very important to the martial art and the sport. We're going to distinguish those two. As far as if you aren't interested in jiu-jitsu at all, I wouldn't even bother, because the fun aspect of it is like, because we know so many of the people in the book
and know of a lot of the moves that he talks about.
Yeah. For me, it was probably again about a 3 and fun, but like that's because I'm like into it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the book was very well written, and overall I'd probably give it like a 2.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's Rickson's fault. I think that's whoever his writer was. I think they kind of did him dirty a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'd give it a 3 in importance if you do jiu-jitsu. I might even give it a 4 of importance if you do jiu-jitsu. I think it is a book that you should understand kind of the origin of jiu-jitsu, where it's moved, and then kind of, where it's going now. I think that's important if you do jiu-jitsu, because there are a lot of schools, like you said, that kind of focus in on one thing. They focus in on just self-defense, or they focus in on just the sport side of it. And I think it is important to keep some of just old jiu-jitsu alive too. Like it is, like where it came from, what it was initially for. And then obviously you can still enjoy and appreciate all the new stuff that jiu-jitsu brings, but I think it is important to understand the history behind jiu-jitsu. So I would say it's a 4 if you do jiu-jitsu. If you don't do jiu-jitsu, it's a 0, because like I don't think you would understand a whole lot. And honestly, Rickson's life story is really, really interesting, but he glosses over the interesting parts of his life and focuses in on just the jiu-jitsu in this book. You know, he doesn't spend a whole lot. I mean, like his whole section with his son dying and all of that, like that alone could have been a book. You know, he doesn't even talk about Crone. Yeah, at all. Like, did you know Crone won ADCC?
Yeah.
You know, like,
he subbed all of his matches.
Yeah, like dude was baller. Doesn't talk about any of that, like his son coming up, you know, all of that. Doesn't talk a whole lot about that kind of stuff. He just talks about jiu-jitsu. So although he is a very interesting individual, this biography really is about jiu-jitsu. It's not about him.
Yeah.
Or I guess not really. I guess that's the wrong way to phrase that. It's not about jiu-jitsu. It's about his jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
It's not about his life.
Yeah.
So the whole book is about his fights, his jiu-jitsu. It really spends a lot of time detailing his preparation for fights. It spends a lot of time talking about like what happened in each of the major fights in his life. It doesn't talk about a lot of the life events. So if you're not really into fighting, you're not really into like the MMA culture, you're not really into jiu-jitsu, just pass on this book. It's not something for you, but if you do jiu-jitsu, I think it is very interesting to understand where it came from. Fun to read. Like you said, it's not the most eloquent book. I'd probably give it a 2.
But there's a lot of like interesting stories in there if you do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's fun.
It was fun. It was fun to hear those stories.
aspect.
And I had heard a lot of the stories before, I will say.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd heard a lot of the stories before, but that's just because since starting jiu-jitsu, I've really is it dived or dove in, dived in,
Who cares?
I don't know, into jiu-jitsu and really like tried to learn as much as I could. So I have heard a lot of the stories before, but I mean, there were some that I hadn't heard for sure. So I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add here at the end? Anything else from the book
From
caught your attention?
I'm trying to think. I mean, the biggest thing, and this is maybe this is like blasphemy, and I'll get my belt taken away from this, but like, man, the Gracies were a weird family.
Yeah. No, they were.
That was like the biggest thing. It's like they came up with like one of the most brilliant martial arts, and like that will never be taken away. Like Elio and Carlos and figuring that whole thing out. But man, just the whole thing, it's just so weird.
Yeah, the amount of drugs.
Yeah, the drugs, the
So
just
much
family
coke.
politics, and
Family
just like
politics.
all of that. It's just crazy.
Their outlook on like
Their
sex.
spirituality stuff. It's just like all very different.
Yeah, they were an interesting group.
Yeah. But
But it isn't.
I'm grateful for jiu-jitsu,
yeah.
I guess.
But I do see that jiu-jitsu is kind of moving away from
Yeah.
that. Like, I get what you're saying, that you don't even think that it will be Brazilian jiu-jitsu for much longer. It'll just be jiu-jitsu, because like I definitely think there's a separation right now between American jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Exactly.
There's already that separation. Like, teams like to be like American jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I think that's only going to continue. So,
Which could be fun in the future if it ever went to the Olympics or something like that. If we like represented countries in the ADCC or something like that.
I think ADCC should do a quintet.
It'd be so cool. And you had gyms.
Yeah, you had like New Wave,
yeah.
B Team, Atos.
Yeah. I mean, just all of those guys. So like,
10th Planet.
because the way that Europe does jiu-jitsu is different than the way that Texas does jiu-jitsu, which is different than the way that California does it, which is different than the way that New York does it,
Yeah.
which is different than Brazil, which is different from Japan, Australia. You know, there's like all these different places that have their own styles based off of the people who are teaching jiu-jitsu there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's awesome. You just got these like different stylistic matchups, which is the exact same thing in judo and in wrestling. Mm-hmm. You have different styles within the rule set. So anyway, I think it'll just get more and more interesting as we.
Who do you think wins the quintet this weekend? I mean, this episode will come out after the quintet, but I want to see if you're correct in your assumptions.
I think Team Sakuraba loses first round. And I think.
Do they have brackets out? Like who's first?
I don't know.
First round matchups are?
They might, but I think. Yeah, I think it's going to be 10th Planet and B Team in the final. I think that both of those, unless they face each other,
match up. Yeah. I agree with that.
And then if that happens, then it will be B Team and Polaris.
Did you hear that Owen pulled out of Polaris?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer.
He's got like another. I think he's got a fight coming up, or he's got some.
He's
sort
got
of
like a super fight or something,
or like some sort of tournament coming up that he's prepping for.
Yeah,
because I think Owen's the most talented on Polaris, or was the most talented on Polaris
for sure.
So I think that was a big hit.
So yeah, I would say that.
But yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be 10th Planet and B Team in the final,
and then I think B Team gets them.
Yeah,
I think they just. Depending on the lineup, I think that matters, because if you were to get, I don't know, because I think like Gio Martinez could take out, Nicky Rod or J Rod. Sorry, he could take out J Rod. He could take out Joseph Chen.
Yeah,
but if you were to put Nicky Rod versus Gio Martinez, then Gio's out. Yeah, so it's like. It just really depends on that lineup, you know, which is really interesting. But I think B Team gets the better hand of 10th Planet. I think B Team wins.
Plus, Craig's the man.
Craig is second place.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yep.
And for everybody who stuck around and is still listening, like, comment, and subscribe. If you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. Really helps with the whole algorithm. I keep saying and asking people to comment, and nobody comments. Not even you, dude. I know you listen to them too.
No, what happened was I used to watch them all on YouTube, and now I'm listening to them on Spotify.
Well, then at least leave a 5-star review on Spotify.
I didn't.
Come on, dude.
Think about it.
Think about it. That goes for everybody listening. And
only
then
on my episodes.
Yeah. I think it's just overall the podcast, if you listen on Spotify. But and if you are interested in being on the podcast, please reach out. You know, love to read books. We'll read literally any book, and got a list of tons of books. So if you're not sure what to read, would love to have you on the podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being on the podcast again.
Mm-hmm.